All right, I thought I would talk about a few things in my local neck of the woods, British Columbia, and how to resolve issues that are arising, leading to poverty and suffering and so on amongst my people. So basically, the first one is the government should deregulate anything that induces or creates a demand for human resources or HR departments. They should cut taxes instead of trying to bleed a stone or squeeze blood from a stone. Basically, all the productive people are leaving. Um, they should. They should. Well, I don't know about should, but the fact is that basic welfare went from 45 to 50% of minimum wage to 34 to 37%, and disability went from 75% of minimum wage to 48 to 52%. So those are some clear areas of failure on behalf of the poor that the socialists claim to care about so much. Next up is productivity. This green stuff is really a waste of time and money and effort. You need profitability for a society to function at all, basically. Otherwise, you're just redistributing a shrinking pie instead of making anything new. Making things that are new is such a potent tool. So focusing on resources and manufacturing is important. We're not even able to manufacture lumber, cut lumber, and prepared lumber. Um, we have to ship raw logs to China now because they bought the pulp mills after we drove them out of business, essentially, with regulations. And now China's got the mill, the pulp mills, or the wood mills equipment, and they've opened up shop, and we don't have the ability to manufacture um, lumber out of raw logs. So getting that back would be a good thing. Um, Next up is now this is the one that I really wanted to get at, which is drug addiction. So basically, my premise is that well, actually, there's two things before drug addiction, which is the finale. There's get rid of subsidies for foreign workers, and put that into welfare, basically. And then also the other one is stop putting foreigners ahead of native locals for housing, socialized housing, and so on. Um, put the local natives first, not the foreigners. And by natives, I mean Canadians, not just Aboriginals. Um, Now, as for the drug one, there's a few things I think should be done. Basically, they should be cut off of disability payments and be rendered onto basic welfare, um, so that the um, the incentive is there to get sober and clean because you get more money for enjoying things. Essentially, um, I forgot another thing, not exactly drug addiction related, but sort of welfare poverty related, which is um, if you cut the niche special programs, you can save on overhead quite a bit and probably funnel the spare money into actually paying basic welfare and basic disability better. Um, because they're quite low, essentially. They're pathetic. Um, and like literally like I mean it's like actually like 100% true that there's plenty of places in my city that I can't afford if I put my entire paycheck into, and we're not talking the highest housing there is. We're talking like medium housing, essentially. It's really pathetic. So yeah, that's why I'm so big on it, because I'm on disability. I'm one of the poor. I want the country to do well. I want the province to do well because my welfare is literally dependent on the society doing well itself in general. Um, um, anyways, so round up cut the junkies off of disability, put them on welfare, so that there's a financial incentive to get clean and sober, essentially, which is to get on disability instead of welfare, which can lead to getting housing or something like that. Another one is round up the junkies, put them on welfare instead of disability, and ship them to a camp for 6 to 8 months, to get them used to being clean and sober. And by a camp, I mean somewhere that is like a proper building, essentially, with fences around it to prevent escape. Um, but you're and make it somewhere away from towns and cities and stuff like that, so that no one's able to really smuggle in drugs very easily or something. Um, and you you have like an outer courtyard or outer area that is like reasonably green and has some flowers and stuff like that. You take care of it, and you have gardening classes and stuff like that, and get people used into the salt of the earth kind of behavior for out of boredom, essentially. And you you essentially open up a um, a um, um, a convenience store apparatus, also providing them 3 meals a day, whatever reasonable cost you can assume for that. Um, the hospital food was actually quite good, when I was in the psych ward for a while, um, a few times. So that's actually something you could do. You could just extrapolate to the junkies, essentially, for their treatment program for 6 to 8 months. Um, and since disability would pay enough to live in some towns, fairly easily, then you could release them to market rate housing or something like that. Maybe help set up their housing situation, and so on, and do automatic deposits to the rental owner guy, so that they get an automatic check, so that the hopefully ex junkie doesn't have the temptation to spend it, instead of paying rent. You know, and essentially the convenience store would include cigarettes. It would include energy drinks, coffee, chocolate bars, chips, pizza, hamburgers, maybe, but like prepackaged stuff, basically. Nothing too, you know. And essentially, what would happen is you would take care of them, but you would habituate them to. It's essentially not consignment. There's a word for it. Let me just double check something. Name for prison version of a store. It's not the constabulary. It's it's a different word. It's a C word though. It's called a commissary. And basically, or a canteen. It's a store within correctional facilities from which inmates may purchase products such as hygiene items, snacks, writing materials, and so on. Um, so you give them the basics. You give them soap and shampoo and showers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, you do all this stuff so they can get used to living in housing, and being clean and sober and spending their money wisely for what they actually want, a little bit, you slowly ease them back into fully mature adult life and so on. And then after they get off the drugs, you start diagnosing their existing conditions and providing services or housing or something, to those who can't fend for themselves, like on a functional level at all. Um, so like if you were like 100 IQ, right? And you smoked yourself stupid to the point where you're brain damaged, so you're 70 IQ, then you get like the special treatment, the special ed treatment, the short bus special kind of treatment for your housing and existence and so on from then. But if you're like still 100 IQ, you know, um, then you fend for yourself a little bit, but like they'll set you up or help you set yourself up rather in a small town or something where people know each other and so on, so that you begin to have a normal living standard even on disability and welfare essentially. And basically once they're off of drugs, you put them on disability, um, and hopefully but it'll stick because they've been sober for 6 to 8 months essentially, and they're in a new town and so on, away from their drug dealers and stuff like that. And you know, you cigarettes will be kind of important. I don't want this goody goody two shoes you shouldn't smoke business, because I smoke. But and I didn't appreciate it when they prevented me from smoking in the psych ward. That got me into some trouble. Um, but smoking is one of those few vices that you can enjoy, and isn't really that damaging. Um, when you're a junkie or something like that, or an alcoholic or something like that. So it's one of those few vices that you can actually enjoy, and it doesn't mess with your head too much. And it's a stress reliever kind of thing. Um, so that should be a thing essentially. Um, but like energy drinks, chips, pop, pizza, some donuts, maybe chocolate, candy, stuff like that. Like a proper convenience store essentially. Um, um, but like a designated safe smoking area or something like that, so you can take your lighter, go and like when you go to the designated smoking area, and then you hand it back in when you exit it, and so on. To prevent firebugs and pyros and arsonists and so on in the facility. But you do that, and then you allow them to walk around outside as much as they want, and so on. You know, um, in the external area around the building, essentially, or buildings, or something like that, amongst nature a little bit. It's sort of like a school almost, right? Where you have the school grounds, you have the parking lot, you have um, the chain link fence around the school, although it's not quite as restrictive. You're kind of introducing them to a school boy or girl level of existence again, and you're gradually sort of, it's slightly more advanced. It's like high school almost in a way, except you can't leave until you're done the program essentially. And the reason why market rate rent works is because then it's less inclined to be snobbish towards you because you're disabled, and it won't be prone to government mismanagement as much because it's not a government program, except for getting the housing. So the market rate, the market mechanisms for correctives and so on would exist, and you could leverage your disability or welfare to get into market housing, and so on. And that's how I would solve the drug problem. And if you get caught doing drugs again after you go into the program the first time, then you go straight back into the program for 4 months or something. Not quite as long, but a while. And you don't lose your disability when you get back into the program, but you do lose it before you go into the program when you're doing drugs for basic welfare. And basically what that does is it says essentially that you're able to pay your rent. So, like, the rent check keeps going to the landowner, and you have your debit card and stuff, so you can buy commissary or canteen snacks. And so on. Um, but yeah, that's what I would do. Um, and maybe maybe what should happen is for those who come back temporarily, they should charge the disability account for, let's see, you get about $500 on welfare currently for expenses, and you get about $1,000 for disability for expenses. So if you charged about $500 off the disability repeats until they left, then that would essentially make it so that they're not like purposefully getting on drugs to get caught to go back if they want to. You know what I mean? Because it's not as profitable as you would think if they didn't do it. So it's like if they really do it a lot, then maybe they just really need that kind of thing, and eventually you can put them on the proper mental health housing stuff or something like that with the monitoring and stuff like that. Essentially, um, and that is a solution I have for the drug epidemic and poverty and welfare and so on. And then you can actually afford to, because you have less overdoses and less calls from for ambulances and so on to waste the taxpayer money on, so you can afford to put it into proper payouts for disability and welfare, along with all the other little tricks I just mentioned before when I started. So that's how I do it.